This is quite interesting, Perry. Remember, I saw this come up on my timeline. Remember, at the start of 2022 and what happened last year. And the market certainly didn't stabilise and went up around 10%. Don't make the same mistake and try and wait it out this time. It's true though, isn't it? I mean, why? This is all about why didn't Fife house prices crash in 2023? But it's a bit. There's the obvious there. I mean, that came up on my timeline in the history today, actually. From that'll be at the beginning of 2023.
January last year.
What happened in 2022? Don't wait it out. I mean, Fife house prices have actually still moved up in the year. And as we review the performance of the Fife property market in 2023, it's evident that despite the challenges, the housing sector in the area has shown remarkable resilience overall. I mean, let's look at this. At the beginning of the year, many commentators actually suggested house prices would drop. Like many commentators, actually, myself included, I'll be honest, Perry, that was one of the points I actually said in 2023. You know, I kind of think house prices might drop about 5% based on the current circumstances and exactly what they were at the beginning of 2023. Now,
just to cut in on that, Jim, you know what I found really interesting was one of the comments that you shared to the team. I think it was an Instagram comment where someone had been watching the news and the news came up saying, oh, house prices have dropped everywhere. And there was this big drama. And then right then said, except in Scotland and Northern Ireland, right at the very end. And the gentleman said, thanks for that, property guru, but I'll actually take all my advice on Fife properties moving forward. Thanks very much.
And effectively that's what it is, isn't it? Because you know exactly what's happening. And the same with Fife as well. Fife went up in the year on year, 1.7%. So Fife never dropped at all last year, but the Halifax said at that point in time last year there would be an 8% drop. Savills suggested 10%, and the respective Nova Mura Bank actually said 15%. Yet according to the Land Registry, they've ended actually 0.5% higher. You know, overall itself, 0.5% higher, the Land Registry, and that's updated information real time. So looking at the Land Registry figures for Fife house prices are actually, now, I said 1.7%. They're actually 3.1% higher than a year ago at this point in time. Now, what about all the people that just sat there and thought to themselves, I'm going to wait it out because house prices are going to drop? You've now got a situation where house prices actually went up year on year on average in Fife. Interest rates went up as well from the beginning of the year. So therefore, you've now held out so long, you're going to be penalised because your mortgage is going to be astronomical in place of what it would have been at the beginning of last year.
You're getting a double whammy hit there, aren't you? Because the house you buy is more expensive and what you pay for it is going to be more expensive in your monthly outgoings, isn't it?
It kind of tells us it's like you shouldn't wait and gamble. This is what I say every single time. Here we go right now. I keep an eye on the FTSE all the time because my pension, for example, is invested in UK equity. So I put a monthly amount in every single month. But I don't really time that as opposed to, you know, like say, oh, well, I'll wait to see if it goes down below 6,500 points, or I'll wait to see if it, you know, it's a bit too high just now. I don't sit and time that. It's as Warren Buffett says, it's over a long period of time. It makes no fundamental difference. And when you're buying a house, it's the same analogy. And the fact that if you're staying in a house for about 5 or 10 years, even for if it's your family home where you're going to have your family, you're going to grow up, it's going to be about 20 years at least. So you're going to be waiting quite a long time. And over the factor of 20 years, the 1 or 2% you're trying to save in the house price purchased now is completely insignificant in comparison.
Yeah. Absolutely. As in when you look at actually where your intro part there, Jim, when you said that we thought that we saw the property market potentially going down by maybe 5%, the fact that it's going up 3.1, I mean, that's an 8% swing just on what we thought, and we have all the data.
I'll be honest,
So
Perry.
it just
I was influenced a wee bit by the media last year, because
Right.
everybody was sitting saying 8 and 10 and 15. And I thought to myself, I can't actually see any evidence to suggest that. I can't actually see that for Fife particularly, and for Scotland. So it didn't resonate with me. And and at that time I wasn't confident enough to come out and say, I actually think the Fife house prices might move up, because it's completely against the tide of everybody else. So I kind of went with the token gesture of anything up to 5%, it might drop by, but you know, it might stabilize as well. So I should have just pinned my colours to the mast like I do now anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you said, you talk about you went with the tide, but your vision and your kind of message to us constantly each day is, if everyone's swimming in that direction, swim the other way. So you need to apply that.
Observe the masses and look at the exact opposite. Okay.
Exactly.
What happened in the final quarter then? You know, do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, the final quarter of 23 recorded above average levels of new property sales in the UK, which is positive. That looked like 11.1% higher than the year before. So 221,996 houses, so basically nearly 222,000 houses sold October, November, December of 23 in the UK as a whole, compared to just under 200,000 in the same period in that 3 months in 2022. So you can see where that 3% is coming from, because the demand was there for property. So sense would tell you, if the demand's there, that you're going to be paying what you need to pay to get that property that you want, if it's the house of your dreams, isn't it?
That's actually quite surprising, isn't it? I mean, you would think less houses would sell on transactional numbers because interest rates were a lot higher in the last quarter of 2023 compared to 2022. I suspect we're going to talk about Liz Truss's budget, which threw everybody off track at that time in 2022, didn't it? And that's why everybody stopped buying, because they were terrified that, you know, she's made a mistake. And interest rates are now going up, and banks are getting nervous, and we're getting downgraded as a UK economy by Moody's and Standard and Poor's. You know, so that makes it more expensive for us to borrow from other countries, or interbank rates as well, which make mortgage rates higher.
People didn't have confidence in the financial markets at that point, because the messaging was also negative, and there was just a great big unknown there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
But it was interesting. But what was even more interesting was a drop of 25.4% in the number of sales fall-throughs. So that basically, what that means is basically sales, maybe properties that have sold but actually then didn't complete, case handed over for whatever reason. So you know, they may have you may have cancelled it, circumstances changed, it might have been an issue with legal exchanges, and prevents the completion happening. So that dropped from 75,000 in Q4 in 22 to 56,761 in Q4, which is really surprising. That's a big shift in the positive.
But again, I think that purely comes down to that budget. It was completely a mess. I could elaborate with a more extreme word, but but I'm sure everybody, and the mortal words of Clint Eastwood. There's another phrase for that, and it was on, is it what, Heartbreak Ridge? He says it. He calls it a cluster, whatever it is that comes after it.
We'll just say sprinkle it with glitter, it still looks the same.
So, that's quite surprising.
What did it look like for Fife, Jim?
Yeah, local figures for Fife. That's the KY. I mean, Fife for me personally is all about the KY postcode area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now and again, it's DD6, which is Wormit and Newport. That kind of comes into Fife. It's a bit. Fife's a bit an anomaly, isn't it? Because it incorporates part of Kinross and Perthshire, and it also incorporates part of Dundee as well, which is bizarre because it's Fife.
I know.
So when we look at the figures in quarter 4 of 2022, 1,168 properties had actually agreed a sale. But 240 properties actually fell through, meaning they were net 928 property sales.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking at Q4 of 2023,
Mm-hmm.
there was 1,255 properties with a sale agreed on them. Again, more than 2022, which was really surprising. Yet only 171 properties fell through, which meaning there was a net of 1,079 property sales, which again defies logic, but it falls in line with the national average, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100% it does. And it's quite interesting because, I mean, that's Fife as a whole, but I do have some information here, Jim, just to break it down into what that looked like regionally, because that interests people. Because, again, what we often see as well, Fifers tend to live in their little bit of Fife. It's rare that they'll move from one bit of Fife to another, isn't it? They tend to live in that part for whatever reason. So this might be interesting to people. So out of those kind of grouped numbers, if we look at Q4 of 2022 for Glenrothes, for instance, 121 properties had sale agreed on them. 33 property sales fell through, which meant 88 completed sales. Flip that to Q4 of 2023, it's 141. So again, it's an improved number with sales agreed, but then only 18 fell through versus 33 the previous quarter of the previous year. So again, a really positive. So 123 completed in Glenrothes in that quarter versus 88 in the quarter of the previous year. That's a big jump. That's about a 50% add-on. So quite surprising for Glenrothes. Although actually, it's not really.
This actually reaffirms, Perry, this reaffirms clear cut, when you look at all these statistics, that the health of the Fife property market is based on transactional numbers. And if transactional numbers are more than the year before, we can only conclude between 2022 and 2023 that 2023, transactionally wise, in the last quarter compared to 2022, is a lot more healthy in terms of the property market itself.
Absolutely.
What about St Andrews and that then?
Yes, I mean, you see it throughout it. So I've if we look at Levenmouth, for instance, because Levenmouth again is always kind of similar numbers to Glenrothes. Levenmouth's doing really well, and actually be interested to see how that's going to pan out once spring comes and the station opens. They've started the training for the drivers there, so that's quite interesting. But if we look at 2024 Q4, 121 Levenmouth properties had sales agreed on them. 27 properties fell through, which meant that 94 completed. Flip that to Q4 of 23, 136 had sales agreed on them, 21 fell through, so 115 completed. So similar kind of percentages to Glenrothes. If we look at Cooper, in 22, 100 properties had sale agreed, 23 fell through, 77 completed. Then Q4 of 23, it was 113. So again, you're seeing that bolster. Only 14 fell through, so that was 99 completed. So again, a big increase in percentage there as well. St Andrews in 22 was 76 properties sold, 12 properties fell through, so 64 completed. Flip that to this year of 23, 74 St Andrews properties, so actually a little bit less. But that was properties sold, but then almost half, down to 6, actually fell through. So much more stronger buyer, which meant 68 completed. So overall, still an uplift in St Andrews, which, considering that's the biggest price point, that's kind of roughly what you would expect to see, because that's the market that those individuals are in. If we then look at the East Neuk, for instance, in 22, 56 properties sold, 11 properties fell through, which meant 45 completed. If you flip that to this year, then it's pretty much exactly the same in East Neuk. So you're sitting at 55 versus 7, almost the same. So not a big shift there at all in the East Neuk. So similar picture, but it's strong positives in all of the areas, and none of it on a downturn, which I think is really positive.
Yeah, I think this surge in activity is a testament to the enduring value and the attraction of home ownership, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely it is. And I think people maybe have had, the people that did wait, I know we opened this by saying don't wait, but I think the people that did wait then suddenly thought, actually, I'm not going to wait any longer. And so they were serious, ready buyers, good to go.
Yeah. I mean, market sentiment is definitely bolstered by rising incomes. There's no doubt about that. An initial decline in mortgage rates, making a property investment increasingly feasible for many. That's key here. You notice, the first time in a long time, this is the first time ever in my lifetime, I have seen record low unemployment, inflation coming down to where it should be now, interest rates at the higher level, but still more affordable. But more importantly, wage inflation outperforming inflation itself. That's the first time I've seen all the, it's like the sun and the moon and the stars all aligning at once. And what comes out of that, is yet to come. But as Buffett says, before, when we look back and reflect back to where we were before, and all that money that was pumped into the economy, you have to then keep asking yourself, when something significant like that happens, the first question he says all the time is always ask yourself, so what's next?
Yeah.
What next is the question you should ask. So what next comes out of this is the fact that transactional numbers are very, very healthy, and Fife as a result of that year on year from 2022 to 2023.
Yeah.
I think it will be similar in 2024. Now, if you look at these numbers, demand is also considerably higher, up 19% according to Zooplus property searches from last year. So Zooplus property searches from last year is up 19% year on year, coupled with an increase of 20% in available properties for sale, which is on the UK in Q4, it's around about 633,000 in 2023 versus 524,000 in 2022 in the last quarter, and compared to that last year. So the property market has seen an increase in choice, but it also is supporting robust sales. Now, this pricing alignment.
Absolutely.
Let's
And I had
about that.
Yeah,
the pricing alignment between buyers and sellers has reduced a downward pressure on the values overall itself. So why the question I would pose to you, Perry, then, why didn't Fife house prices fall by 8 to 15% as predicted in 2023?
I know. I think it flummoxed all of us, but I think you covered some of the headlines there, which is quite interesting. I mean, despite average mortgage rates climbing from just over 2% to 6%, you can't get deals under than that now, obviously, in the last 2 years. House prices haven't plummeted as anticipated, and I think that's quite interesting. I think it defies against most of everyone's opinion of what would happen, for all the reasons you said about how the economy was going and the interest rates going up. But I think there's several factors, and there's three main ones I would say, and you've touched on them briefly there, Jim. So labour market and earnings, I think that's made a big impact. It's a strong labour market with good earnings. The UK's robust labour market and a 7.3% growth in average earnings has provided people with the opportunity to have financial stability. They can sustain an improved interest rate, as in it's increased on their mortgages because their income has gone up, so they're more robust. And so that rise in rates hasn't really significantly impacted them because they have that stability in employment and they've got the stability with income and their income improving more than the rates have gone up. So I think that's strengthened it. So I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't plummet.
Yeah, I would think, and the doom and gloom that's been peddled throughout 2022 and 2023 has led people to rein in their spending a wee bit and actually be a bit more cautious about what they do going forward. Some people, anyway, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that because of that, then the weather. This is how they're weathering the storm right now, or the so-called storm in the media's painting.
I would agree with that. I think that's one factor of why people are maybe a wee bit more cash rich. But I think this, for me, what I see as well when I'm speaking to people, not just on a professional level, but even on a social level, I think that people's attitudes have changed as well to how they spend money since COVID. Yeah. I think post-pandemic, I think people suddenly goes, how much money have I saved since I've not been going out? And so there's been a whole different thinking process of what people feel is a want and a need, or a must-have, or well, do I really need it? I think before it was like an instant, we were just going to do it without thinking about, can we afford to? Now people are actually thinking, well, hang on a minute, I never used to spend that on that, so why do I want to start doing that again? So I think people have got maybe a wee bit of a bolster with cash as well, with what they've saved and the habits that they've changed and how they spend.
It'll be interesting to see what comes in 2024, especially with the budget for the Chancellor in the beginning of March. Now, this is quite interesting because if you're watching Martin Money Lewis last night, Martin Lewis Money, saving expert, if you were watching that last night, there was a strong indication about, unfreezing. Well, we know that housing benefit, local housing allowance, is actually getting unfrozen for the last 3 years. There's also talk about, other things. He was insinuating in a small degree at different calculations and the way things are done and other things are getting unfrozen. So I've got a funny feeling. Remember, it's an election coming up as well. So you've got to think about what is. I have a sneaking suspicion this budget's going to be a bit of a giveaway, to get people on side, to get them back into power. Therefore, then you've got to think to yourself, what next?
Yeah, exactly.
Because again, we're back to injecting money into the economy again. So are people going to go there and go on holidays? Are they going to be a bit more aspirational in their spending? Are they going to then take that, instead of getting the basic model of that car, I'm going to take the higher model, I'm going to pay a wee bit extra every single month for my payments? Are they going to commit to all these different things because it's what next, combined with what you said there, the labour market and the earnings being up year on year, 7.3%?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about lender restraint then? How is that? Is that an impact on any of this?
I think it does do. I mean, lenders have adopted policies to support many British households struggle with repayments. They've effectively reduced the number of forced sellers and maintaining up market stability as well. And I think the fact that whilst they're stress testing people better, I think, and by that what we mean is they're really anticipating, well, what next? Exactly what you said there, Jim. Whereas before it was like, what's your current living? And we'll just give you it on today's price. What they're doing is, well, hang on a minute. What if it changes in 6 months, 12 months? So they're forecasting it in the higher multiples to give people a safety net, effectively. So almost taking that decision out with your control of, well, my mortgage didn't cost as much, so I'm going to upgrade my car. And then your mortgage changed is in 12 months. And then suddenly you go, hang on, can't afford all of this now. I think the safety nets and the way that lenders are being sensible, I think, is making a big impact as well.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, you're right. You've hit the nail on the head. I think personally what it is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We can definitely say that the stress testing has made a fundamental difference. We've actually noticed it because we have an asset management repossession contract, and we've had that since 2000. Since the crash. Let's be honest, 2009, 2008. And at that time we were putting maybe about 70 to 90 properties in that year of the crash through repossession. Now, that's not us. They were just coming to us and basically saying, could you sell this on our behalf? And that's fine. We need to put it on the market. But now, for 2023, I think we're lucky if we could count on one hand, actually, how many came through from that contract. And yet they're the biggest asset management company in Scotland in terms of the repossession and repossession territory. So that then that gives a strong indication as well about the fact that the market is very, very resilient as a result. You touched on the fact that mortgage affordability and stress testing, perhaps that has been one of the most influential factors between the introduction of the stricter mortgage affordability tests and the stress testing and the mortgage market review tests for new borrowers since April 2014, hasn't it?
Yeah, massively so. I think it's been really positive in regards to giving buyers confidence as well, that actually their future is not impacted. So they feel strength. And maybe that actually demonstrates when we talked about the numbers earlier on as well through Fife, about why there hasn't been so many sales falling through, because actually these buyers then can have that affordability. They're not frightened to then go to that stage of, like, here's the cash, can I have my keys? There's a bit more confidence there with that, I think, because it's been done properly.
Definitely, I think there was a duty of care there anyway, but from the 2009, the fallout were there. It's funny, we're still referred to that now and how the implications of that, and we've still got that. It's almost iconically become a benchmark about where we start from or where we reflect back to. We've never actually gone back from there. We'll actually just go back to that point and talk about all the lessons we've learned throughout that process since then.
Yeah, and I think that's really important that happens. It's like you say, I think that's like the starter mark, isn't it? No one's interested before that, because it was such a fundamental shift financially for many people and businesses that lessons needed to be learned and safeguards needed to be put in place. And I think that is reflective in what we're seeing now.
Yeah, so I mean, these stress test regulations were designed to prevent British householders from taking on excessive mortgage levels during periods of low mortgage rates. They've been pivotal in preventing this housing crash, definitely, like 1988 and 2008. no doubt about that, when that happened. When borrowers borrowed far too much. I remember they were giving away 125% mortgages at that time. And this caused rapid house price inflation. This is where people don't realise that house price inflation comes from as well. House price inflation comes from affordability tests. It's how much you've got disposable income wise can you put towards the affordability of the mortgage you're going to get every single month. So therefore, if mortgage rates are historically low, the amount you can borrow with based on, say, £500 to £800 a month that you can spend on a mortgage, which is maybe about 25 to 30% of your income every single month, which most people actually, that's the kind of the benchmark where it is. Most people tolerate, then they think if that's what I can afford, it's a bit like Provi on a small scale, isn't it? It's like how much can I afford every single week, and that's what you can afford. So what can I borrow? And then that determines that. Now, if interest rates and base rates have gone up and mortgage rates have gone up, then you can borrow less. Therefore, it curbs house price inflation as a natural result. But the flip side of that, if interest rates are historically low and they're always kept low, it makes it so easy for people to borrow a hell of a lot more. And therefore, that's why they almost get borrowed beyond their means. So when, and I always talked about this, my tolerance level in terms of buy to let. You know, interest rates have to go up to 15 or 17% before I need to worry, you know, when that happens. But I always take the stock and the resolution or the comfort and the fact that they'll never get to that point, because there's no way the government's not going to step in and look at some sort of solution, even if they get to about 10%, because that's what they're having to go to. So there's no way the government's ever going to let that happen because of that. And if it does happen, guess what? We're all going to hell in a handbasket.
Everyone's bust.
Everyone's bust anyway, so it doesn't matter. Don't. There's no point in counting your money, because there's nobody there to buy anything or provide you anything, because nobody's got a job now.
No one's going anywhere.
Yeah, so that's never that could never actually physically happen because of that. So this is what's caused a lot of house price inflation. And the great thing about stress testing is it's curbed that and kept it under control. And it's built in resilience for people having higher mortgage rates later on, enabling many households to manage that transition to the higher mortgage rates effectively when they came out of their 5 and 2 year and 5 year and 10 year fixed rate deals. I mean, here's an instance. Let me give you an example. Even though the average rate of all new mortgage borrowers have paid has dropped from around 4% in the autumn of 2014 to just under 2% in the autumn of 2021, borrowers have had to still prove that they could actually afford 6.5 to 7% mortgage rates to secure a mortgage in these timeframes itself. As interest rates have risen in the last couple of years, the stress testing has increased the average rate to 8.7%. So the borrowers need now to prove they can afford to pay a mortgage of 8.7% before they actually get it. Even though mortgage rates are getting banded about in 5 year fixed rate deals of under 5% now, they're still required to prove that they can do 8.7%.
It goes back to what we said earlier, though, that's sensible. It's a sensible approach, isn't it?
Yeah. What impact will that have on Fife properties market in 2024 then? What do you think?
I think that's where we've seen it. You know, our local market reflects the national resilience, I think. We've gone through and looked at those numbers, and we can see that in Fife that the transactions are improving in all areas of Fife. So there's no hotspots. But the regulatory constraints on buying power, while capping the purchasing ability up to post-pandemic, we'll kind of start to use that as a reflection point now as well, don't we, as well as 2008. Having reflection maintained a steady demand for quality homes. And that's what we've seen. And we've seen that in the numbers that we've just displayed today.
This is quite interesting because the other day I saw a post on social media and somebody said Stuart Milne Homes is in trouble and they're now in administration. Now, for one thing, administration doesn't mean out of business. Administration means they can't pay their debts because maybe the bank called their loan back in. But when you look into this number, and somebody actually said, this is just the beginning. And I'm like, it's not, because Stuart Milne Homes was up for sale 2 years ago. Because
Yeah.
Stuart Milne was actually wanting to retire, and he put it up for sale so somebody else would buy it. And because no one else has bought it, that's the only reason it's got to this point in time. So it's not a factor of the current state of the housing market. It's a factor of the fact that he wants to retire, but nobody actually wants to pick his business up and run with it at the price he wants. So that's why that's happened. It's got nothing to do with the current state of the housing market, which again we've said is very, very resilient. So first-time buyers in Fife, for example, are still buying plenty of homes. Now, this is the lifeblood of the market, first-time buyers. First-time buyers and investors, property investors for buy-to-let. Let's be honest, we're not popular as landlords, definitely. We know that. But the fact is, it's the landlords that prop up the bottom end of the market alongside the first-time buyers. They don't necessarily compete against them because they're two different. Sometimes they cross over, but we need that sort of thing because that allows the first-time buyer that's in their property to then upgrade to the middle market, and then the middle market person upgrade to the upper quartile market as well, and then the upper quartile market to then come down possibly to the middle market again, where there's a bungalow or something like that for them, something that's more one level living for them. So there's a natural cycle to the property market and a natural lifeblood to the property market as well overall.
Well, the first-time buyers are the foundation. They're the foundation of it all, aren't they? At the end of the day, they're the foundation that gets that chain moving.
Well, it's kind of, just as you said foundation, I had this pictorial version in my head of the house and the fact that the first-time buyers are the foundation of the house. Then you've got the middle market, which is the middle point of the house. And then you've mostly got the roof, which is the roof over their head, is the family homes, the bigger units that people want to have a family in. They'll live in there for maybe 15 to 20 years overall because it's a accommodating size. And as your family grows, it accommodates the needs that you have. But let's go back to first-time buyers approaching the market with a slightly different, they're approaching the market with slightly more caution and greater financial preparedness than a couple of years ago, I would say.
I agree.
They're adapting to the current economic climate by opting for smaller homes in Fife to offset the elevated costs associated with borrowing and also with energy bills.
Yes.
And council tax. And everything else that goes with it, repairs and improvements, because they've all increased as well. Instantly, another reason for higher first-time buyer demand is rising rental prices, which have risen by nearly double-digit annual percentage increases since 2021.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue what happens, or I'd debate what happens in the rental market overheating, is the rental market is a result of the sales market. One follows the next. If you've got a sales market, it overheats in terms of prices and everything becomes unaffordable, people then go to rent instead. Therefore, the rental market goes up on supply and demand as well when the rents go up. It's a natural cycle. If you take rents all the way back to 2006, for example, the average rent's only gone up about 2 or 3% every single year. It's actually gone up less than inflation on average every single year since then. And yet we would be led to believe that these double-digit increases seem to happen every single year, and they're not.
It's a challenge, isn't it?
What about the future then? What we're thinking about the future?
I think it's crucial to understand that while base rates may start to fall in 2024, as we anticipate, as you said, Jim, it's going to be a voting year, so it might impact.
I'm still swaying about that if they will fall. I think there's a number of factors that could influence inflation. That's all.
Yeah, and you're right, there could be, but regulatory constraints on buying power continue to hold, which is a strong thing. That ensures the market stability, as we've said.
Yeah.
All of those things limit and suggest that house prices are unlikely to rise sharply in 24, but are more likely to drift slightly towards maybe the 1-3%. But that's still definitely a positive position.
Yeah, I think so. That definitely is it. I mean, depending if everything was, this is how I look at things. A typical accountant, if everything, or statistician, if everything was equal and one thing changed, house prices, I think, will be between 1 and 3%. It could be the other way, though. It could be downward to 1 and 3%, depending on how inflation happens, on unemployment levels, on affordability as well. all these different things on wage negotiation. So if it's a lot less than inflation, then clearly that'll obviously indicate that there's a depreciation in people's actually take-home pay. Therefore, they'll have to rein themselves in because it'll be more expensive to actually borrow. So, and interest rates, base rates has a main factor in that, and we'll have to think about that as well. So it could be anything at this point in time, but as I said, if it all stays the same, nothing changes, 1 and 3% increase. For homeowners and prospective buyers in Fife, there's an opportunity to plan and navigate your property decisions with a long-term prospect. As the housing market navigates through fluctuating mortgage rates, there's cautious optimism that a slight ease in the rates might boost buyer confidence. Now, this shift could encourage more individuals to proceed with buying homes. We really don't want an influx of a huge amount of people because buying homes again, because then it'll just overheat the market again. Stability and consistency is probably the way forward we'd hope for with that. Those ready to ascend the property ladder may leverage the buyer's market depending on the type and location of their second or third home in Fife, presenting offers lower than the asking price in hopes of actually securing a deal. This is probably the time of year where a lot of people actually think the property market is actually quiet, when in actual fact it's not. At this point in time, I've clearly demonstrated that the amount of activity on websites is actually a lot higher this time than it was at the beginning of last year. There's more people looking for now than there is ever before. Now, that's just us personally. Maybe that's to do with the way we've engineered our websites, maybe the lead generation, the way that all comes in, maybe that's increased as a result of that. But I still believe overall, a lot of people are actually looking for a lot more. Because remember, at the end of the day, people grow up. They make decisions every single day. We've proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, based on last year's numbers, that every single day in Fife, someday 20 people make a decision to sell a house. And about 17 to 18 people go on to buy a house in Fife. Additionally, those looking to relocate is actually quite important as well, and would welcome any dips in fixed mortgage rates. A significant decrease in a 2-year rates has already been observed, potentially exciting, enticing a segment of buyers to re-enter the market from outside of the area. Let's be honest, when you look at the affordability in Fife of a property and you compare it to Glasgow, you compare it to Edinburgh, you compare it to Perth, all these different areas round about here, easy commuting distance for everyone, especially now you've got the train station and leaving. So easy commuting distance. There is a real desire when you look at that and think, I could really rein it back. I could live in a house that's more affordable, and I could actually have a better quality of life as a natural result of just moving from Edinburgh to Fife.
Absolutely, and especially because we're seeing a lot of hybrid working as well. It's given that flexibility to people as well, where they don't necessarily need to be at an office every day.
Yeah, definitely. But landlords, landlords overall. Were you thinking about that as well, about landlords? Because we've no talking about landlords.
I was just going to say, how is it going to impact landlords? Because you mentioned that.
It's a bit of a mixed scenario, isn't it? Let me think about that. Well, really, while they may be experiencing notable increases in rental income, the financial pressures from elevated interest rates, for example, I'm going through it myself. I'm actually taking some of my ones and refinancing, not actually getting more money out, but just putting them onto better deals, 5-year fixed rate deals. Now, why am I doing that, 5-year fixed rate deals? And when interest rates are predicted to come down, because the numbers work for me, and historically rents always stay the same or go up over the short, medium, and long term. So if the numbers stay the same and the rents are never going to really go down significantly, and I've got a good margin there, I don't need to particularly worry. But I'm more the factor that I can't control, which I can by fixing, is the mortgage.
Yeah.
Because I'm in it for the long haul. Insurance costs and taxation is actually real as well. Section 24 has made a huge impact on people having them in their own names, because they're immediately, if you've got a job and you're on Section 24 and you own the house in your own name and you rent it to someone else and you've got a mortgage, you're almost nailed to the wall straight away, because you have to earn a certain amount which pushes you into higher rate band, and you only get the 20% tax credit on under Section 24 against your tax bill. So you face paying 20% extra on income that otherwise you wouldn't be paying if you were a limited company, which is bizarre. It's two different sections of rules based on
Makes sense, does it?
Yeah, based on your limited company, if you own it in your own name. I don't know what the government's overall objective is out of that. Whether it's actually to control the market by getting everybody to incorporate, therefore incorporations are easier to track, is possibly the desire that they're after, because then they've got control of that, and also it controls it for second home tax, and it also controls it for collecting second home tax. Because if it's in your own name, it could easily get missed. If it's in a limited company, it'll never get missed, because it's always a second home in a limited company, because it's not for you personally to stay in. And then what is on the horizon about? Because I'll have to, I'll tell people this, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I remember seeing a discussion paper from the government back in the early 2000s. And the desire was to incorporate everybody in all small businesses. And the possibility of that is, if you have 0 or 1 employee working in that business, we're then going to treat you as self-employed, and we're going to say it's income tax rather than corporation tax from then on. Now that opens a huge can of worms. So I don't know if that's coming. It's a typical example. It's like, let's get everybody on. Look at the petrol. Okay, so we'll give you a huge reduction in what we called gas. They were doing LPG at that time, and a lot of people changed to LPG. And I'm a person that's like, well, I tell you what, let's wait and see before I spend all that money and change to LPG. But the LPG was so attractive; it was half the price of petrol at the time, and a lot of people actually changed and adapted their cars to it. But what's happened to LPG now? It doesn't exist.
Nope.
But equally, what happens to LPG if it had taken off? Well, what they would do is they run down petrol, and then they just put the taxes on LPG from then on, because you've got nowhere else to go with it.
Exactly.
So it's a typical catch-22 with the government in terms of how they do things. So just be warned about that for anybody out there, about how the government thinks about their taxation policy, and you're only getting whatever you're getting for the short term, and eventually they'll catch up with it and start to raise the taxes on it once more people sign up to it. It's only a mechanism to get you to sign up to it, that's all. So let's get back to buy-to-let landlords. Plenty of speculation in the press about the fact that it may lead to reduction in the number of rental properties as landlords potentially exit the market, and could further imply the availability of rental stock. And I think it will, and it has actually happening. There's no doubt about it. On all the landlord forums I see and I'm involved in, all the private landlord forums that are, you have to join to get in them on Facebook, a lot of people have definitely contemplated exiting the market, if not have exited the market completely. A lot of long-termers, they just had it. The induction as well, and the introduction of from the 1st of April, and the fact that the Scottish government as well wants to put more legislation in place in order to control rents, is actually a real great concern for people who have mortgage rates which are continuing to rise.
Yeah.
Especially if we see an area where maybe the property prices don't increase like people want it. Because remember, buy-to-let is LTV, the loan to value is 75%, and less. You can't get more than 75% LTV on buy-to-let. So when you look at it like that, there could be a ticking time bomb here if property prices actually decrease even 5% this year, next year.
Yeah, well, it's eating into that percentage, isn't it?
Yeah, I will eat in that percentage, and then immediately it's like, well, you can't remortgage onto a different mortgage now. You'd have to pay off some of that equity in that property or that mortgage in order for it to bring it down to a loan to value of 75%. And for landlords that have pushed themselves right out to the hill and actually to the maximum loan to value, and possibly even manipulated it a bit. Let's be honest, that's what does happen sometimes.
It doesn't, Jim.
If we get the surveyor to overvalue it a bit, so it looks like to the bank that the loan to value's in light, and they get cash back, and they get a no money down deals. That's what happens. You could no money down deals. Anybody's a buy-to-let landlord out there right now, or an investor and they're looking to invest, just beware of no money down deals. It always comes back to haunt you. If you can't be resilient enough in the short and possibly the medium term, where no money down deal in case anything turns, like for example, equity drops and you have to pay more into that in order to get it back on line with the bank, then you shouldn't be doing no money down deals. You're you're effectively taking a gamble.
Yeah.
So the number of British landlords selling up has increased by 55% over the last couple of years, and the number of landlords buying has only decreased by 22%. Again, in the previous 2 years, the net number of British buy-to-let properties are still still very marginally growing, just marginally though, and yet we still need to build. I think we still need to build 250,000 houses a year in England, 25,000 in Scotland, and it's like the Scottish government have just cut back the budget for social housing and affordable housing by 200 million.
Yeah. So how's that going to work?
How would you do that? How is that possible?
It's not possible.
What's your final thoughts on this?
I think my final thoughts, when you reflect, we started talking about 22, we've gone into 23, we're talking about what 24 may look like. I think for me, it's some of it's unknown, some of it can be calculated, some of it's demonstrated. You can look at what history has done. But I think for me, the key is don't look at all the headline stuff. Speak to someone that understands the market, that can guide you.
Yeah.
Don't wait. If your circumstances are saying now, do it now, and speak to a professional that can help you with that and work through your property journey and what you need to do. And we don't always say today's the day you need to sell. You know, sometimes the response is actually you're right, don't sell, or actually go now, or wait 6 months, or it depends really on your individual circumstances. But you won't understand really how you can make your circumstances work for you without getting good advice. Yeah,
it definitely is evaluating your options, isn't it? Yeah. And your comprehensive understanding of the local property market, and the fact that you're right, get professional advice, get someone else out first before you do it. Even on a buyer service, and the fact that if somebody's considering buying, just run it by an estate agent, another estate agent, not the estate agent you're trying to buy it from, because obviously they know your circumstances, but run it by another estate agent to see what their thoughts are on does this make sense? You know, is this the right price I could be paying for this property, or could I actually be overpaying? Because remember, you don't know what you don't know. So you want to plug yourself into the market, into somebody who actually understands the market and where it is right now. Because I still see people now and again, once in a blue moon, paying 20, 30% over the odds. And I'm thinking, that market disappeared ages ago. So I'm quite surprised that actually people are actually still doing it. But it does happen once in a blue moon, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does.
Okay, I think we've given everybody some really good advice out there. That's probably time to finish off here. Thanks for coming on, Perry. Really appreciate it, and everybody else for tuning in. If you're watching this later on, and you want to ask a question, you don't want to put it in the comments, just send it to us privately. We're happy to consult that with you. And until next time, guys, it's bye-bye from us.
Thank you. Take care.